Operation Big Brother cases in DuBois County are continuing to move forward. We'll have more on that. Plus, yesterday's GigaCity announcement in Jasper is tied to one local legislator's agenda, and District 48 State Senator Mark Messmer has our first legislative update of the year tonight on Inform. All of that and much more is up next here on the 18 WJTS News. Hello, I'm Bradford Raths. Well, Operation Big Brother cases are continuing to move through the DuBois County court system. Yesterday, 49-year-old Carrie Eckert of Huntingburg became the second person to be sentenced in this case. Eckert pleaded guilty in DuBois Superior Court to 2 Class B felonies for dealing in a Schedule II controlled substance. She was sentenced to 6 years of supervised probation by Judge Mark McConnell. The state had asked the court to sentence Eckert to 12 years that would have been served at the Indiana Department of Corrections. Meanwhile, the DuBois County Probation Department had recommended a total sentence of 8 years. 4 of those would have been served on Level 1 home detention, followed by 4 years of supervised probation. Now, on a related note, 2 other defendants involved with Operation Big Brother have reached plea agreements with the state. 21-year-old Caleb Hammond of Huntingburg pled guilty to a Class C felony for dealing in a look-alike substance. Hammond also admitted to being a habitual substance offender. Hammond is expected to be sentenced to 10 years at the Indiana Department of Corrections. Also, the DuBois County Prosecutor's Office says 45-year-old Jacob Bowles of Huntingburg pled guilty to a Class C felony for dealing in a Schedule IV controlled substance. He is expected to be sentenced to 6 years at the Indiana Department of Corrections. Now, sentencing for both Hammond and Bowles is set for January 28th. In all, 4 of the Operation Big Brother cases have now been resolved. The other 12 are awaiting jury trials, according to the prosecutor's office. The prosecutor's office says it will continue to fight the war on drugs here in DuBois County. An overnight fight at a residence left a Jasper man with injuries and the added insult of going to jail. At 2 o'clock this morning, Jasper police were called to a residence in the 400 block of 3rd Avenue on what was reported as a domestic disturbance. Police say 25-year-old Ethan Stout had been involved in a fight with another man at the residence after he had been accused of stealing a wallet. Stout then threatened to fight anybody at the residence, and police say he was wielding brass knuckles. After being hit, a fight began and Stout was pushed out the front door, and the door was then shut. Following that, police say Stout took a chair and smashed the glass out of the front door. Stout lost his balance and fell down as he was swinging the chair, damaging the banister. After that, Stout took a piece of railing and threw it through the door. The railing hit the man inside that he had been fighting with. Stout was taken into custody after the police investigation. He suffered injuries to his face and torso during the fight and was taken to the hospital to be treated. After he was cleared at the hospital, Stout was lodged in the DuBois County Security Center. He is charged with disorderly conduct and criminal mischief. Yesterday's GigaCity announcement in Jasper ties in with the efforts of one area senator during this current legislative session. New District 47 State Senator Erin Houchin has made broadband internet one of the items on her agenda. Houchin says she is working to streamline the permitting process to make the construction of required infrastructure for broadband easier. She's also working with members of the House to come up with a broadband ready certification for communities in our area. Houchin says broadband can work to improve southwestern Indiana in several different ways.
For me, it's important from an economic development standpoint, but also an education standpoint. So if we can get broadband in our rural communities, it will expand educational options for our school children here. So it's certainly important to me. It's one that I'm going to be working on this session and probably the sessions to come.
Houchin says broadband has gotten to the point where it is a key factor in economic development. She says it's now important for southwestern Indiana to keep up.
It used to be we would have, businesses would look for infrastructure in terms of roads and water and sewer, et cetera. And now we're moving into a time when they're looking not only for those infrastructure needs to be there, but also broadband. It's just part of the next generation of economic development and the worldwide workforce. So we're really, in southern Indiana, don't want to be left out and want to do everything we can here to try to have the infrastructure needs to attract businesses.
As for other priorities, Houchin is working to have the iRead 3 test administered at the 2nd grade level rather than at the 3rd grade level. She says she is concerned about the amount of testing that students have each year, as it takes away from time that students spend learning. A Southern Indiana man has been sentenced to 100 years in prison after pleading guilty to murder and other charges in connection with the drug-related shooting near Paoli back in June that left 2 men dead and another injured. 49-year-old Elbert Brooks of New Albany was sentenced on Thursday in Orange Circuit Court. He also pleaded guilty to attempted murder and robbery resulting in serious bodily injury on December 30th. A second count of murder was dismissed as part of the plea agreement. 56-year-old Nikki Fields and 25-year-old Corey Michael Harris were killed in the June 23rd shooting. 29-year-old Daniel Smithson suffered a gunshot wound to the mouth. The shooting occurred just after 1 o'clock on June 23rd when Brooks and 2 other men charged in the case went to Fields' mobile home in the 2300 block of Orange County Road 200 West to buy meth. The other 2 men, 36-year-old James Davidson and 35-year-old John Carpenter, both of Marengo, are still awaiting trial in Orange County on murder charges. Finally this evening, we're only a week into this year's state legislative session, and most of the conversation has centered around the next 2 years' state budget so far. Indiana is projected to have an additional $700 million in revenues over the next 2 years. During his State of the State address earlier this week, Governor Mike Pence called for $200 million to be funneled into K-12 education over the next couple of years. That amount would include $41 million for charter schools. District 48 State Senator Mark Messmer says with more revenue coming in, there should be even more money available for education.
Primarily, I'd like to see if we've got $700 million in additional dollars, K-12 education's 57% of our budget. I'd like to see them get the lion's share of that $700 million. And the governor was a little on the low side on what he projected to spend on additional K-12, but we made some good strides last budget session. We need to get folks a little ahead of the game this time.
Messmer says the governor's State of the State address went about as expected this past week. Now, Messmer says there are other issues to watch for, including infrastructure. That ranges from roads to utilities to the aforementioned high-speed internet. There will also be discussions about the gas taxes, alternative vehicles, and revenues associated with those. Messmer says that stream of revenue could ultimately generate more money for infrastructure to help solve any funding shortages heading into the future. All right, coming up after the break, your local forecast, sports with Kurt Guxell, and Inform with Mark Messmer. That's all up next here on the 18 WJTS News. Local people watching local people.